Commander Zelkith stood on the bridge of the Vraxian patrol cruiser Times Dominant Talon *, watching the stars drift past the viewport. It was another boring shift in Sector 447, deep in the outer territories where nothing ever happened. His crew moved through their routines with the lazy confidence of soldiers who had never seen real combat. "Commander, I'm getting a strange reading," said Sensor Officer Prix, her voice cutting through the bridge's quiet hum. Zelkith didn't even look up from his datapad. "Define strange." "Energy signature, sir." "Big one. But the system keeps glitching when I try to classify it." Now Zelkith paid attention. He walked over to her station and looked at the displays. The numbers made no sense. The energy output suggested something massive, but the displacement readings were off the scale. Nothing in the Vraxian database matched this profile. "Run a diagnostic on the sensors," Zelkith ordered. "Probably just a malfunction." Prix's fingers danced over her console. "Diagnostics show green across the board, sir. The readings are real." Zelkith felt a small flutter of unease in his chest. In 20 cycles of service, he had never seen anything like this. "Get me visual confirmation. Whatever this is, I want to see it." The main screen flickered to life. At first, there was only the black of space and distant stars. Then the computer enhanced the image, and every member of the bridge crew went silent. A ship hung in the void, and it was enormous. The vessel stretched over 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a dark gray that seemed to absorb light. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and bright lights ran along its length like veins of fire. The ship wasn't Vraxian. It wasn't Korthian, or Luminari, or any of the other major species. The design was completely alien to their databases. What is that?" whispered Navigation Officer Kelm. Zelkith's mind raced. No one operated capital ships in neutral space. It violated a dozen treaties and trade agreements. More importantly, the Vraxian Empire had eyes on every major shipyard in the known galaxy. A vessel this size couldn't just appear from nothing. "Scan it again," Zelkith said, his voice tight. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what we're dealing with." Prix worked quickly, but her confusion was clear. "Sir, the power output alone matches a fleet carrier. The weapon systems are. I can't even identify half of them. And the armor plating is reading as some kind of composite I've never seen before." "Origin?" Zelkith demanded. "Unknown, sir. The computer is trying to match the design to known species. But nothing fits." Zelkith stared at the massive ship on the screen. His training told him to maintain distance and report to command. His curiosity pushed him to learn more. He made a decision. "Open a communication channel. Standard first contact protocols." The communications officer nodded and sent out a broad-spectrum hail. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the speakers crackled to life with a response that made Zelkith's blood run cold. The voice was artificial, clearly a computer system, but the words were in perfect galactic standard. "United Earth, Expeditionary Fleet. Do not approach within 50,000 kilometers. This is your only warning." "United Earth?" Kelm repeated, his voice confused. "I've never heard of them." But Zelkith had. His eyes went wide as ancient memories surfaced from his academy training. Earth. Humans. The Death World species from the far rim that had barely discovered faster than light travel a few cycles ago. They were classified as primitives. Barely worth monitoring. The last intelligence report he'd seen said they had a few colony ships and maybe some light frigates for system defense. This was no light frigate. "Pull up all files on humans," Zelkith ordered. "Everything we have." The tactical display changed to show data files. Zelkith read quickly, and with each line, his confusion grew. According to Vraxian intelligence, humans were dangerous in their own way. They came from a high-gravity world with extreme weather and deadly native life. They were aggressive, creative, and had spent most of their history fighting each other. But they were technologically backward, barely stepping into the galactic community. None of the files mentioned battleships. None of them mentioned weapons that could threaten Vraxian cruisers. And certainly none of them explained how a human vessel was operating deep in Imperial space with the confidence of a major power. "Sir, the vessel is powering up," Prix said urgently. "I'm reading weapons charging, and shield generators coming online." Zelkith made the fastest decision of his career. "Helm. Full reverse. Get us back to the jump point now." The Times, dominant Talon Times, turned and accelerated away from the human battleship. No one on the bridge spoke as they watched the massive vessel on their rear sensors. It didn't pursue, but it didn't power down either. It just hung there in space, silent and threatening. When they reached a safe distance, Zelkith opened a priority channel to Imperial Command. His message was brief and urgent. "This is Commander Zelkith of the Times, dominant Talon Times, to Imperial Command. Request immediate strategic assessment. Human Dreadnought-class vessel detected in Sector 447. Classification: unknown. Threat level: unknown. Vessel displays technology far beyond current intelligence estimates. Recommend immediate escalation to War Council. This changes everything." 1. He ended the transmission and looked back at the screen. The human ship was still there, waiting. Zelkith realized with growing dread that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had ignored humanity because the humans seemed weak and primitive. But somewhere, in the dark, between the stars, the humans had been building. And now, they were here, with ships that could challenge empires. The question that burned in Zelkith's mind was simple and terrifying. How many more ships did they have? The emergency session of the Vraxian War Council convened within hours of Commander Zelkith's transmission. Grand Admiral Thaxis entered the council chamber with heavy steps, his ceremonial armor clinking softly in the silence. Around the circular table sat the most powerful military minds in the Empire, and every single one of them looked worried. The holographic display at the center of the table flickered to life, showing the image captured by the Times' dominant Talon asterisk. The human battleship rotated slowly in 3 dimensions, its massive form dominating the room. Council members leaned forward, studying every detail with the intensity of predators sizing up unknown prey. "This cannot be real," said Fleet Commander Vorix, breaking the silence. "Our intelligence reports clearly state that humans possess only primitive vessels. Colony ships. System defense craft. Nothing like this." Intelligence Director Quirix stood, his expression grim. "Our intelligence reports are 80 cycles old. We stopped active monitoring of human space after they achieved basic FTL capability. Our assessment was that they posed no threat and required no further observation." 80 cycles? Thaxis repeated, his voice dangerous. "You're telling me we've been operating blind for 80 cycles? Quirix didn't flinch. The humans were classified as low priority. We focused our resources on the Korthian expansion and the border conflicts with the Selenar Consortium. Standard protocol for primitive species. Thaxis wanted to rage at the incompetence, but he knew Quirix was right. The Empire had limited intelligence resources, and the humans had seemed harmless. It was a logical decision at the time. That made it worse somehow. "Show me everything we know about them," Thaxis ordered. The hologram changed to display files on human history and biology. Thaxis read carefully, and what he saw disturbed him more than the battleship itself. Humans came from Earth, a death world by any standard classification. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, weather systems that could kill unprotected beings in minutes, and native life that hunted in packs. But it was the human wars that caught his attention. The files showed images of mushroom clouds from nuclear weapons, cities reduced to ash, and battlefields where millions had died. Humans had split the atom and immediately used it to kill each other. They had poisoned their own planet with chemical weapons. They had invented flying machines and turned them into bombers within years. "They fight like demons," muttered Commander Jalis from across the table. "Look at this." The file says they have no concept of acceptable losses. They'll sacrifice entire armies to achieve objectives. Junior analyst Varix, the youngest member of the council, spoke up hesitantly. Sirs, there's something else. I've been studying their culture through intercepted broadcasts. Humans do things that make no sense. They keep predators as pets. They eat substances that are toxic to them for pleasure. They throw themselves out of aircraft for entertainment. And their military history shows they never surrender, even when defeat is certain. Madness, Vorik said. Absolute madness. No, Thaxis corrected. Not madness. Adaptation. Deathworlders evolve differently than we do. They don't avoid danger. They conquer it. That's what makes them dangerous. Quirix activated another file. I have worse news. We intercepted human transmissions 3 days ago. Most were encrypted, but we broke some of the civilian channels. The vessel Commander Zelkith encountered. The Times' indomitable asterisk is not alone. It's part of a battle group. 12 ships total. The room erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped as council members demanded answers, proposed strategies, and argued about threat levels. Thaxis let them vent for a moment, before slamming his fist on the table. Silence. The room went quiet. We need facts, not panic, Thaxis said. Quirix, tell me about these ships. From what we've gathered, the humans have been building in secret behind their quarantine zone. They used the natural nebula formations around their space to hide construction. Our long-range sensors couldn't penetrate the interference. By the time we realized what was happening, they already had a fleet. Deployment status? Thaxis asked. Unknown. We know of the battle group in Sector 447, but there could be others. Human communication protocols are surprisingly sophisticated. They're using quantum encryption that we're still trying to break. Thaxis considered this. The humans had hidden an entire military buildup from the galaxy's most advanced intelligence network. That spoke to planning, patience, and understanding of how their enemies thought. Not the actions of primitives. What do they want? He asked. Why reveal themselves now? No one had an answer. The doors to the council chamber opened, and every member stood instantly. Emperor Craxus entered, his presence commanding immediate respect. The ancient ruler moved slowly to his seat at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on the hologram of the human battleship. Sit, Craxus ordered, and everyone obeyed. The Emperor studied the image for a long moment. I remember when we first detected human radio transmissions. Simple broadcasts. Primitive technology. That was barely 200 cycles ago. And now this. He gestured at the battleship. Grand Admiral Thaxis. What is your assessment? Thaxis chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, humanity has undergone rapid technological advancement while remaining unobserved. They possess capital ships capable of threatening imperial vessels. Their psychology suggests they are unpredictable and dangerous. However, we don't yet know their intentions. No. Then find out, Craxus said simply. I want to know why that ship is in our territory. I want to know if humanity is expanding. And most importantly, I want to know if they're coming for us. Yes, Your Majesty. I'll mobilize the Third Fleet too. Carefully, Craxus interrupted. We will not provoke a war with an unknown force. Send ships, but make it clear we're observing, not attacking. Open diplomatic channels. If the humans want to talk, we listen. If they want to fight. The Emperor's eyes hardened. Then we'll show them why the Vraxian Empire has endured for 10,000 cycles. Thaxis bowed. It will be done. As the council dispersed to carry out their orders, Thaxis remained behind, staring at the hologram. Somewhere in the dark, humanity was watching. They had built ships in secret, planned their reveal with precision, and now waited to see how the galaxy would respond. The Grand Admiral had fought in 30 campaigns and commanded fleets in a dozen wars. But for the first time in his long career, he felt genuine uncertainty. The humans were an unknown variable in a carefully balanced equation, and unknown variables were the most dangerous thing in warfare. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UESS Times Indomitable Asterisk, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the tactical display. The massive view screen showed the surrounding star system in perfect detail, with dozens of colored icons representing both friendly and potentially hostile vessels. Her crew moved with quiet efficiency around her, each person focused on their tasks. "Captain, that's the 17th sensor sweep in the last 6 hours," reported First Officer Commander James Okonkwo from his station. "They're definitely watching us." Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "Good. That's exactly what we want them to do." Good. She had expected this reaction. When humanity decided to reveal itself as a military power, they knew it would send shockwaves through the galactic community. The Vraxians were smart enough to be cautious, which meant they were smart enough to negotiate. That was the plan, anyway. Lieutenant Sarah Zhao looked up from the tactical console. "Ma'am, I'm counting 12 Vraxian warships. Now. They're maintaining a 100,000-kilometer perimeter, but they're definitely building up numbers." "Let them watch," Vasquez said calmly. "We're not here to fight, unless they force us to." She walked to her command chair and sat down, calling up a file on her personal display. It was a recording from 3 years ago, and even now it made her angry. The file showed wreckage floating in space near Jupiter, the remains of a Vraxian scout ship that had entered the Sol system without permission. The recovery team had found the ship's data cores mostly intact. What they discovered inside changed everything. Detailed maps of human space, assessment files that classified humanity as primitive and harmless, trade calculations that treated Earth's resources as unclaimed property. And most insulting of all, a cultural database that described humans as barely evolved beyond tribal warfare. The scout ship had been observing Earth for months before a malfunction destroyed it. The Vraxians never came looking for it, which told humanity everything they needed to know. They weren't important enough to search for. They were insects beneath the notice of galactic powers. That day, the United Earth government made a decision. They would not beg for recognition. They would not wait for permission to join the galactic community. They would build a fleet in secret, and when they were ready, they would take their place among the stars whether the galaxy liked it or not. "Engineering. Status report," Vasquez called out. Chief Engineer Maria Ramirez's voice came through the comm system. "All systems green. Captain, the new reactor is running at 98% efficiency. We could maintain combat operations for 6 months without resupply." "Excellent work, Chief," Ramirez chuckled. "The Vraxians are probably losing their minds trying to figure out our power system. Wait until they learn we're running on fusion compression drives. They haven't even theorized yet." Vasquez shook her head, though she was smiling. Humanity hadn't invented anything revolutionary. Fusion power, energy shields, particle weapons, all of that existed in the galaxy already. But humans had a talent for combining existing technology in ways no one else considered. It came from necessity. When you evolved on a planet trying to kill you every day, you learned to be creative, or you died. "Captain, incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer David Park. "It's from the Vraxian flagship. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact." The bridge went quiet. Every eye turned to Vasquez. This was the moment they had been building toward for 3 years. First contact on humanity's terms. From a position of strength. "How polite was the request?" Vasquez asked. Park smiled slightly. "Very polite, ma'am. They used formal diplomatic language and multiple courtesy phrases. They're scared," Okonkwo said quietly. "They don't know what we're capable of. So, they're being careful." Vasquez nodded. "That's the whole point of this exercise. Fear, breeds respect, and respect opens doors to negotiation. She stood up and straightened her uniform. Tell them I'll meet with their representative at the neutral station designated in the treaties. Standard first contact protocols. Yes, ma'am. As Park sent the response, Vasquez walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Behind her, the crew continued their work. These were veterans. Every single one of them. They had fought in the belt conflicts when mining colonies went to war over resources. They had served during the Mars pacification, when the Red Planet's independence movement turned violent. They knew combat. And they knew how to stay calm under pressure. Permission to speak freely, Captain? Asked Lieutenant Zhao. Granted. Do you think this will work? The show of force, I mean. What if they decide to attack instead of negotiate? Vasquez turned to face her tactical officer. Then we fight, and we make sure they remember it. But I don't think it will come to that. The Vraxians aren't stupid. They're probably analyzing every byte of data they have on us right now, trying to figure out our capabilities. And the more they learn about human history, the less they'll want to test us in combat. She was right, of course. The Vraxians would find records of the world wars, where millions died over scraps of territory. They would read about nuclear weapons used against cities. They would see footage of human soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most species. And they would realize that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was stubbornness. Humans didn't know when to quit. It was a survival trait, born from 1,000,000 years of evolution, on a planet that demanded absolute determination. Give up, and the environment killed you. Stop fighting, and predators ate you. Surrender, and your tribe starved. So humans learned never to surrender, never to stop, never to accept defeat until they were physically incapable of continuing. That terrified other species when they finally understood it. Captain, the Vraxians are moving their ships back to 200,000 kilometers, Zhao reported. I think they're giving us space. Smart of them, Vasquez said. She returned to her command chair and pulled up the mission parameters. The Times, Indomitable Times, was officially here for deep space cartography and establishing listening posts. That was true, as far as it went. But the real mission was simpler. Be seen. Be impressive. Be undeniable. Humanity was announcing itself to the galaxy, and they were doing it with the biggest, most advanced ships they could build. The message was clear. We are here. We are strong. And we will not be ignored. All hands, this is the captain, Vasquez said, opening a ship-wide channel. In a few hours, I'll be meeting with representatives of the Vraxian Empire for formal diplomatic contact. This is what we've been working toward. Our mission is to show the galaxy that humanity belongs among the stars. You've all done excellent work, and I'm proud to serve with you. Stay sharp, stay ready, and remember what we're fighting for. Vasquez out. She closed the channel and smiled. Somewhere in Vraxian space, admirals and politicians were panicking. They were scrambling to understand how a primitive species built a battle fleet under their noses. They were wondering how many more ships humanity had hidden away. The answer was enough. More than enough. And soon, the galaxy would learn to take humanity seriously. The neutral station hung in the void between territories, a small diplomatic outpost maintained by the Galactic Council for exactly these situations. Grand Admiral Thaxis arrived with an escort of 20 ships, their weapons powered down but shields active. It was a show of strength and caution, in equal measure. He stood in the docking bay, surrounded by 10 of his best guards, watching the airlock. Captain Elena Vasquez arrived alone. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and she stepped through wearing her dress uniform. Dark blue with silver trim, medals on her chest, and not a single weapon visible on her person. She walked toward the Vraxian delegation with her head high and her stride confident, as if she owned the station. Thaxis felt his guards tense. They were confused by the human's approach. In Vraxian culture, arriving without guards suggested either supreme confidence or foolish arrogance. Looking at Vasquez's calm expression, Thaxis suspected it was the former. Grand Admiral Thaxis, Vasquez said in perfect galactic standard, offering a slight bow of respect. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Captain Vasquez, Thaxis replied, returning the bow. Your presence in Vraxian territory has raised many questions. I imagine it has. Shall we discuss this somewhere more comfortable? They moved to a conference room, Thaxis's guards taking positions outside while Vasquez entered alone. The Admiral noticed her heartbeat remained steady, her breathing calm. Either she was an excellent actress, or she genuinely felt no fear. Given what he had learned about humans in the past few days, he suspected the latter. They sat across from each other at a simple table. Thaxis activated a holographic display, showing a star map. Let us be direct. Captain, your vessel is operating deep in Imperial space, without authorization. Your species was classified as primitive and limited to your home system. Yet you appear with a warship that matches our best capital ships. Explain. Vasquez leaned back in her chair, completely relaxed. Your intelligence was outdated. Humanity has been expanding and developing for the past several decades. We chose not to announce ourselves until we were ready. Ready for what? To be taken seriously. The bluntness of her answer caught Thaxis off guard. Most species would have offered diplomatic excuses or flowery language. Vasquez just stated her purpose as simple fact. You could have requested diplomatic recognition through proper channels, Thaxis said. Why this aggressive approach? Vasquez smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. Admiral, let me tell you what we found 3 years ago. A Vraxian scout ship entered our home system without permission. We recovered its data cores. Do you know what they said about us? Thaxis remained silent. They classified us as pre-industrial primitives, barely worth monitoring. Our resources were listed as unclaimed assets. Our culture was described as tribal and violent. The files suggested that whenever humanity advanced enough to be useful, the Empire would simply integrate us. No negotiation. No choice. Just absorption. That was an assessment, not policy, Thaxis said carefully. Was it? Because from our perspective, it looked like the Empire was planning to treat us like children who didn't know what was good for them. Vasquez leaned forward. Humanity learned a long time ago that respect isn't given freely. It's earned. So we built ships, trained crews, and developed technology. Now we're here, and you're negotiating with us as equals. That's exactly what we wanted. Thaxis studied the human woman across from him. She was young by his standards, probably barely into her 4th decade, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen combat and death. The scars on her hands were faint but visible, the marks of someone who worked with their hands as well as their mind. What does humanity want? He asked. Trade partnerships, mutual defense agreements, recognition as a sovereign power, the same things any species wants. And if we refuse? Vasquez's expression didn't change. Then, humanity continues expanding on its own. We establish our own trade routes, our own alliances, our own territory, with or without Vraxian approval. That sounds like a threat. It's a statement of fact. We're not asking permission to exist, Admiral. We're offering you the chance to shape how we exist in relation to your empire. Partnership or separation. Your choice. Thaxis felt a grudging respect for the human's directness. She wasn't playing diplomatic games or dancing around the truth. She was stating her position clearly and letting him make his decision based on facts rather than assumptions. I've been studying your species, Thaxis said. Your history is remarkable. And disturbing. You've fought wars that killed millions. You've created weapons capable of destroying your own planet. You've survived conditions that would kill most galactic species. Tell me, Captain, should I be afraid of humanity? Vasquez considered the question seriously. That depends on whether you're planning to be our enemy. Humans are loyal friends and terrible enemies. We don't start fights, but we finish them. We value peace, but we're very, very good at war. Your vessel, the Time's indomitable asterisk. How many ships like it does humanity possess? Enough. That's not an answer. Vasquez smiled again. No, it's not. But it's the only one you're going to get. Would you prefer to never find out the exact number, Admiral? Or would you like to test our strength and risk losing ships finding out? Thaxis understood the game now. Vasquez was offering uncertainty as a weapon. The Vraxian Empire could attack and discover humanity's true strength through combat, or they could accept humanity's claims and avoid the risk. It was clever psychology. We intercepted some of your transmissions, Thaxis said. Your battle group consists of 12 ships. That's hardly a fleet. That's one battle group, in one sector, operating openly. Vasquez's eyes gleamed. How many other groups do you think we have operating quietly in different regions? How many ships are still under construction in our shipyards? How many weapon systems are we testing that you don't know about? She was bluffing. She had to be. But Thaxis couldn't be sure. And that uncertainty was exactly what she wanted to create. You're asking me to negotiate from a position of ignorance, Thaxis said. I'm asking you to negotiate from a position of wisdom. You're a military man, Admiral. You understand the cost of war. Every ship destroyed, every soldier killed, every resource spent on conflict is a resource not spent on advancement. Humanity is offering you a choice. Work with us, and we both benefit. Fight us. And even if you win, you'll pay a price you might not want to afford. Thaxis stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. His mind worked through the calculations. Humanity was small compared to the Empire. But they were technologically advanced and apparently willing to fight if pushed. A war would be expensive and potentially lengthy, and there were other threats in the galaxy that required the Empire's attention. I cannot make this decision alone, Thaxis said finally. I need to consult with the Emperor and the War Council. Of course, take your time. The Time's indomitable times isn't going anywhere. How long will you remain in our territory? Vasquez stood as well. As long as necessary. We have supplies for 6 months of independent operation. Longer if we need to ration. 6 months. Thaxis filed that information away. Whatever power system the human ship used, it was efficient beyond anything the Empire currently possessed. That alone made humanity valuable as potential allies. I'll return to the capital and present your offer, Thaxis said. But I want your word that there will be no hostile action while negotiations continue. You have it. Humanity doesn't want war, Admiral. We just want respect. As they walked back to the docking bay, Thaxis asked one more question. What will you do if we reject your offer? Vasquez stopped and looked at him directly. We'll expand in different directions. Form alliances with other species. Build more ships. And eventually, the Empire will have to deal with a much stronger humanity. Better to negotiate with us now while we're still willing to be flexible. They parted with formal bows. Thaxis watched Vasquez return to her shuttle, alone and unafraid. As he boarded his own ship, his mind was already composing his report to the Emperor. Humanity was dangerous, not because they were violent, but because they were smart, determined, and utterly convinced of their own worth. They had taken the galaxy's dismissal and turned it into motivation. And now they were here, forcing ancient powers to acknowledge them. The galaxy would never be the same. News spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Humanity had a battle fleet. The primitive Deathworlders from the Outer Rim were operating capital ships in major territorial zones. Within days, every government, corporation, and military organization knew about the Times, indomitable Times, and its encounter with the Vraxian Empire. The reactions varied wildly. On the peaceful world of Luminar, the Council of Scientists gathered in their crystal halls to debate the news. Elder researcher Vixana examined the limited data available on human ships with fascination rather than fear. "Look at these energy signatures," she said to her colleagues. "The humans have managed to miniaturize fusion compression technology that we've only achieved in laboratory settings. How did they do it so quickly?" "Necessity," replied junior scientist Kelmon. "I've been reading about their homeworld. Earth is classified as a Category 9 death world. They evolved under constant pressure. Their technology development isn't elegant, it's practical. They combine existing knowledge in ways we'd never consider, because we don't have to. Should we be concerned about their military presence?" Vixana considered the question. "The humans haven't attacked anyone. They're simply demanding recognition. I propose we reach out with offers of scientific exchange. If they're this advanced in engineering, imagine what we could learn from their perspective." The Luminari voted to send diplomatic envoys to human space. They were scientists first, and the opportunity to study a species that had climbed from stone tools to fusion drives in mere millennia was too valuable to ignore. On the war moons of the Corthian Hive, the reaction was different. Hive Lord Zarthok watched, intercepted human military transmissions with growing unease. The Corthians were warriors, bred for combat across countless generations. They respected strength and dismissed weakness. "Play that section again," Zarthok ordered. The transmission replayed. 2 human officers discussing a training exercise. The relevant part made Zarthok's mandibles click nervously. "Acceptable casualties for this operation are estimated at 20%. 20%? That's almost a full battalion. Command says it's within acceptable parameters for a successful mission." Zarthok turned to his war council. "Did you hear that? They consider losing 1/5 of their forces acceptable. Not preferable. Acceptable. They're more ruthless than we anticipated," said War Leader Krex. "Most species try to minimize casualties. Humans just calculate them into their strategy. Find out everything you can about human combat doctrine," Zarthok ordered. "I want to know how they fight, how they think, and most importantly, what would make them stop fighting. We need to understand this species before we encounter them." The Corthian Hive quietly updated their strategic maps, marking human space as a zone to approach with extreme caution. Meanwhile, the UESS Times Indomitable Times continued its mission in Vraxian territory. But it wasn't alone anymore. Every few days, another human vessel appeared in a different sector. The UESS Times Perseverance Times was detected near the Luminari border. The UESS Times Defiance Times appeared in neutral trade zones. The UESS Times Resilience Times was spotted conducting surveys in unclaimed space. Each ship followed the same pattern. Operate openly. Respond politely to hails. Make no aggressive moves. But demonstrate clearly that humanity had the technology and will to defend itself. Galactic news networks struggled to keep up with the sightings. Analysts debated endlessly about how many ships humanity actually possessed. Estimates ranged from 20 to over 100. No one knew for certain, and humanity wasn't telling. Captain Vasquez received daily reports on the galaxy's reactions from her intelligence officers. She read them with satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. Humanity had gone from ignored primitives to a species that demanded attention. Empires were updating their strategic assessments. Trade guilds were inquiring about potential partnerships. Even aggressive species like the Corthians were being cautious. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth," announced Communications Officer Park. "It's Admiral Chen." Vasquez smiled. Admiral Chen was her mentor and the architect of humanity's reveal strategy. "Put her through." Quote, the holographic display showed an older woman in full naval uniform, her gray hair pulled back severely, and her dark eyes sharp with intelligence. "Captain Vasquez, I've been reading your reports. Excellent work. Thank you, Admiral. The Vraxians are still negotiating, but I think they're leaning toward partnership rather than confrontation. Good. Because I have new orders for you. You're being promoted to Rear Admiral and given command of the First Contact Fleet. The Times, Indomitable Times, will be your flagship. Vasquez felt a surge of pride. I'm honored, Admiral. You've earned it. You did what we asked. You showed the galaxy that humanity can't be ignored. Now comes the harder part. We need to build real relationships with these species. Turn fear and respect into cooperation and trade. I understand. Chen's expression softened slightly. How are you holding up? This has been intense. Vasquez glanced around her bridge, where her crew worked efficiently at their stations. I'm good. The crew is solid. We knew what we were signing up for. Juan. Ever. You've changed the galaxy, Elena. I hope you realize that. 2 months ago, humanity was a footnote in galactic databases. Now, we're a factor in strategic planning across multiple empires. That's because of what you and your crew accomplished. After the transmission ended, Vasquez stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars gleamed against the black. Somewhere out there, the Vraxian Empire was debating humanity's future. Other species were watching and wondering what these aggressive Deathworlders wanted. The answer was simple. Humanity wanted the same thing every species wanted: survival, prosperity, and the freedom to chart their own destiny. They just weren't willing to beg for it. 3 days later, Grand Admiral Thaxis sent an official communication. The Vraxian Empire was prepared to open trade negotiations and discuss mutual defense agreements. They recognized humanity as a sovereign power with legitimate territorial claims. The message was formal and carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. The Empire was choosing partnership over conflict. Vasquez immediately ordered her communications team to send the news back to Earth. Within hours, similar messages came from the Luminari and several smaller governments. The galactic community was opening its doors to humanity, not out of charity, but out of recognition that the humans had forced their way to the table. In the capital chambers of Vraxis Prime, Emperor Craxus watched human ships patrol what had been neutral zones just weeks ago. His advisors presented reports on the diplomatic progress, trade opportunities, and strategic advantages of alliance with humanity. We ignored them because they seemed weak, Craxus said quietly to Thaxis. We looked at their primitive technology and slow development and assumed they were no threat. Yes, Your Majesty. But we failed to account for their potential. They didn't evolve on a gentle world like ours. They clawed their way up from a planet that tried to kill them every day. That made them creative, determined, and very dangerous. Should we be concerned about them long-term? Craxus was silent for a moment. Yes, but not as enemies. As competitors. Humanity will continue to grow and develop. In 100 cycles, they might rival us. In 200, they might surpass us. But that's true of any species. The question is whether we want them as allies during that growth, or whether we want to face them as strangers when they're even stronger. The War Council recommends alliance. As do I. Craxus gestured at the tactical display showing human ships. They've proven they can build and fight. Now, let's see if they can negotiate and cooperate. If they can, they'll be valuable partners. If they can't, we'll deal with that when necessary. Aboard the Times, Indomitable Asterisk, now redesignated as the flagship of humanity's first contact fleet, Rear Admiral Elena Vasquez sat in her ready room, writing her final log entry of the mission. We came to the stars carrying the weight of human history. Every war we fought, every mistake we made, every triumph we achieved. The galaxy looked at us and saw primitives. They were wrong. We're not primitive. We're practical. We're not weak. We're careful about when we show our strength. Today, humanity took its place among the galactic powers. Not because we asked nicely, not because we waited for permission, but because we built the ships, trained the crews, and showed the galaxy that we belong here. This is just the beginning. The hard work starts now. Building trust, establishing trade, proving that we can be partners and not just warriors. But we've already accomplished the most important thing. We made them acknowledge us, and they'll never forget we're here. She filed the log entry and looked at the star map on her wall. Dozens of human ships were scattered across multiple sectors now. Each one, a statement of intent. Humanity was expanding, exploring, and establishing itself as a galactic presence. The age of hiding was over. The age of expansion had begun. And the galaxy would have to make room for the species from the death world, whether they liked it or not. Outside the viewport, stars gleamed with promise and possibility. Humanity had fought for millennia to survive on its hostile homeworld. Now those same survival instincts were driving them to the stars, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them.